So, like the title suggests, here are 4 new builds after the ISLEWEAVER update that I strongly recommend on trying out if you have time and enough resources. These are updated builds for 4 warframes, but I would also like to say that these are not the only warframes that got upgraded in the ISLEWEAVER update. I created this video specifically for those warframes that got an augment, but there are other warframe builds that needed updating, such as Chroma and Saryn after the ISLEWEAVER update. We will discuss that in another video, but for now, let me share to you these amazing builds that is really fun to play with and totally changes how you play a specific warframe. First, let's discuss Caliban. The warframe received a new augment called Razor Mortar, and what it does is turn your Razor Gyre into a grouping ability. It also has a new mechanic wherein if you have active Ortholist as summons with your Lethal Progeny skill, then these sentients will focus fire on those enemies that you have grouped with your Razor Gyre. Finally, the augment gives fire rate bonus, which can be scaled with power strength. This is really a great feature, as with the augment, you not only make Caliban's underused ability actually great, but the fire rate buff is high enough that you can take out things like arcane velocity or fire rate mods in your weapon, then boost your damage with something else. However, the real fun part of Caliban's new augment is not necessary as a weapon platformer. The grouping mechanic of Razor Mortar works like Inaro Sandstorm, and every enemy that you passed will get sucked by Razor Gyre. Once the ability expires, they will be grouped in one place and in prone position, which makes enemies vulnerable for ground finisher moves. Now, I tried the old-school Entropy Detonation combo with the Prisma Obex, but sadly, the damage is not that great. Before you can kill enemies with a ground finisher, every single one of them must get their armor or shield stripped, so that the blast damage of the Prisma Obex with the Augment mod will do decent damage. But before even getting into that part, enemies will just die with the Ortholist seeking projectiles, or with Caliban's 4th ability. Based on experience, the electric damage coming from the Ortholist is superb, since it's used against grouped enemies. You all know how busted the damage of electric when enemies are tightly grouped, and this new augment does create a fun caster build for Caliban. The general skill rotation is that you first summon Ortholist units, then you group enemies with Razor Gyre, strip their shield and armor with 4th skill, and watch them get killed by your ultimate, or the electric damage from your Ortholist summon units. The best part is, since it's a skill-based build, then you can apply another layer or survivability into the warframe by equipping either the Hurus Kubro with its Stalk mod, or the Shade Sentinel with its Ghost mod. Caliban will not be breaking the invisibility provided by these companions, and you can abuse it to kill enemies using only your skill. The warframe is really fun to play with right now, thanks to its new augment, and I strongly recommend that you try it for yourself. Moving on, let's discuss about the new augment of Citrine called Prismatic Companion. I did a theory crafting video about this augment with Citrine, and there was lots of confusion because some players said that it only works on Flesh Companion. I did say that it works with any free-moving companions, just like what Pablo tweeted, and it was the case as not only that you can use your cat or dog as Prismatic Gem right now, but also those Mechanize Hounds, which is now the new Saryn in Warframe. I know you're kind of confused, but let me explain why I said this. So, Prismatic Companion will turn your companion into your Prismatic Gem. All of the characteristics of your 3rd skill will get applied to the companion, and this is a huge quality of life improvement because you don't have to recast Prismatic Gem when you move into another room. In addition, the augment does provide huge duration buff, and you can have more than a minute of duration for Prismatic Gem just by using the primed continuity mod. Do take note that Prismatic Gem does boost your status chance, so as long as your companion is near, then you will have the buff. Also, the ability is great in boosting the damage of any condition overload or galvanized status chance setup, because it can inflict those single element status effects to targets. The status duration buff is also great, and there are instances that you can kill enemies with Prismatic Gem because of its toxin, electric, or heat status damage. The only problem, though, is your companion. Like it or not, Companion will get down in steel path levels and beyond, and when they do, the effect of the Prismatic Companion will end. The Prismatic Gem will drop into the location wherein your companion died, and you will wait for a couple of seconds for your companion to revive. But there's a counter to this, and if you are using melee weapons with Citrine, then your companion will have higher survivability rate thanks to the Primed Pack Leader mod that grants your companion overguard per melee hit. This is broken with Glaive or Exodia Contagion setup, as melee projectiles are also considered as hit, hence giving you the overguard buff coming from the Primed Pack Leader mod. The best part is, whatever element you modded your companion, it will add to the inflicted status effect you applied to enemies. So for example, I have Corrosive, Radiation, Blast, Magnetic, and 2 physical status damage mods in my companion weapon. This gets applied to the enemy when my Mechanized Hound procs its synergized Prospectus attack, and when I turn on Prismatic Gem, it will also apply those single elements separately. In fact, with this combo right now, you can almost apply all the status effects to an enemy, which is why I said in the thumbnail that Mechanized Hound is the new ultimate Saryn right now. You can use other free-moving companions, but it would be a waste not to abuse the status priming capability of the Hound. By the way, when using the Hound, please refrain from equipping the Diversified Denial mod, as when this activates, the effect of Prismatic Companion ends. Also, do take note that you can also make good use of Restorative Bond to lower the revival cooldown of your Hound. Do remember that Citrine has her first skill that forces enemies to drop health orbs when they die. And finally, Manifold Bond is a godsend for this combo, as it will ensure that your Hound will activate whatever mod you have on this slot frequently. Now, let's talk about Kullervo. Honestly, Kullervo's new augment was a big surprise for me, as I did not expect that it would be something else. I did make a theory crafting video about this, and I ended up concluding that Recompense will have better damage, and it can pair with Collective Curse for some mad Aquablades-like combo. It turns out that the augment is actually a quality of life improvement for Kullervo's survivability. So, the new augment called Volatile Recompense will give your recompense a duration mechanic before returning to Kullervo. Just imagine Aquablades whirling around Kullervo for a couple of seconds. But here's the bummer part about it. Instead of slash damage, the augment will deal blast damage to any enemies hit by the Seeking Dagger. Blast is good when it's spread and constantly applied, but when it's just a single strike, then the damage is pretty bad. I'm not disappointed though, as this turns out to be a huge improvement for Recompense. Simply because the dagger will stay for a couple of seconds, and while there are whirling daggers around Kullervo, it will seek out enemies, and each enemy hit will grant you overguard. This means that you don't need to cast Recompense every couple of seconds, and in fact, I always get the max overguard cap for my Kullervo build with this augment equipped right now. The only downside though is that you can't abuse the invulnerability of casting Recompense, as just like what I have feared, the augment has no manual button to detonate the daggers, so it's really a mod that you use at your own risk. But wait, I am not done yet. Although you can't take advantage of the 1-second invulnerability when casting Recompense, but the augment will let you exploit what we call as overguard gating in Warframe. Remember that overguard is protected with a 0.5-second invulnerability mechanic when it's fully depleted, and with the Volatile Recompense augment, you can virtually make Kullervo an immortal god with huge red crit power. So yes, my video about Kullervo getting another power upgraded did not go to waste, but it was redirected to something like making the Warframe immortal. Finally, let's talk about Jade's new augment, called Jade's Judgment. We have talked about this already, and the new augment is like a feels-good mod for Jade, wherein you can spawn Jade Light when you damage enemies with your first skill. The chance to spawn Jade Light seems to improve with Power Strength mod, and it's so good to see Jade being lore accurate with this new augment. However, that's it. The damage of the Jade Light beams is great in normal star chart, but it's a bummer in steel path levels. It only lasts for a couple of seconds, and it's just a jump scare for those players in your team that didn't turn off skill effects. Like I have said, it's a feels-good augment, but not something that will boost Jade's power to a different height. You can use the augment, but still, your Exalted is the best damage dealer in your build. So, that's all about it. I hope that you learned something new from this video. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in my next video.